There's also some pending DNA issues, and we've had a brief sidebar on all of those issues, which is why we're coming to you a little bit later than usual this morning. And I'll let the attorneys add anything else to that as we get started after appearances.
Lee Heiss, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Ms. Saja Thomas, counsel for the department.
Michael Brooks, I'm attorney for Jacob Bliss, the legal father. Mr. Bliss?
Yes, Suzanne Wilhelm covering for Mr. McFarland today on behalf of Cheyenne Denias.
Do we have Cheyenne here? No? Okay. No, also not on Zoom. All right. It does look like we have an ASL interpreter with us.
Hi, good morning. We have two.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Okay.
My name is
So
Rebecca. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
No, that's great. I'm sorry. I'm not used to having interpreters, so I appreciate your patience as well. Ms. Thomas, could you address for us why we've asked our interpreters to join us today?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. It came to our attention that there is the issue with paternity. The legal father has claimed that he is not the biological father, and I believe that was then confirmed by Ms. Denias. And then there was a named potential biological father. And to the best of my understanding and recollection is that the potential biological father is hearing impaired and would need some support and communication.
Thank you, and I'm trying to make that screen in our courtroom more available. All right, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Macy Moore, I'm the foster care worker.
Could you spell that for us, please?
MacyMoore.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have that person with us as well today. Mr. Is it Terry Donnelly? Okay, very good. Well, let's begin with the issues around the legal parentage for the father of this child. Mr. Brooks?
Your Honor, my understanding is this DNA testing was ordered by this court in October. My client has complied. Problem is that the child didn't get taken for DNA testing until very recently. I understand the testing has now been completed, but because of the late time that got done, we don't have the results. I don't want my client to just admit to being a neglectful parent. I want him removed, dismissed from the case. So I'm asking for an adjournment until such time as we can get the results, which I understand will confirm he's not the biological father.
Ms. Thomas, I would like to hear about what's been happening with the delay since the order for DNA testing for Mr. Donnelly and for Mr. Bliss was entered back in October of 2023.
Your Honor, I would ask that Ms. Moore be sworn in.
Ms. Moore, come on up to our witness stand.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, as it relates to the issue of paternity, can you provide us with an update on the timelines of when things were scheduled, who participated, and if there's any likely, any date that we can likely expect results to be provided?
Yes. So the original DNA test was in the beginning of December, and the child had missed his appointment. The soonest that they could get us in for another appointment was January 22nd, last week. I would assume that the test would be back in relatively 2 to 3 weeks.
And when did Mr. Bliss complete his DNA portion?
I want to say December 4th. It was in the beginning of December.
Okay, and what about Mr. Donnelly?
Same day.
Okay, and so the potential biological fathers, or the legal father, the potential biological father, did complete their portions?
Yes.
Okay, and was there any barrier to the child completing their DNA testing, or?
I think there was just a miscommunication of when the test was.
and you said you're able to resolve that and the child now has done the test.
Yes, he completed the test on last Monday.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions of Ms. Moore.
Any questions, Mr. Brooks?
No,
Ms. Wilhelm?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
No questions.
Thank you for your update. I'm sure you'll be back in that chair in just a few minutes, but you're welcome to return to yours for the moment.
Thank you.
The request for adjournment would take us out to the next regular review, and I can offer to you the 9th of April at 9 or 1:30. Any preferences?
1:30.
All right, so the pretrial, as it relates to Mr. Bliss as well as Mr. Donnelly, will be heard on Tuesday, April 9th at 1:30. And hopefully by then, we will have the DNA results back, so we'll know what direction to go on that issue. Okay. So that's all as it relates to Mr. Donnelly for today. Mr. Donnelly, will you be staying with us for the rest of the hearing?
Oh, no, that's for now. Okay. Yes, I'm fine.
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay. So what I need to know is if we need to keep our ASL interpreters with us so that you can understand the rest of the hearing, or if you will be leaving, in which case I won't require them to stay either.
Yeah, and I'm to so.
You want them to stay?
You can-
Yeah, I'll go ahead and continue getting the interpreter, et cetera.
Okay, great. Well, that's good. Well, thank you, ladies. We'll welcome you to the rest of our meeting. I will continue to leave my camera off because that puts our interpreters in a better position in the courtroom on our monitor. And let's go to our review. Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. I visited with the child face to face. He's doing very well in his maternal grandparents' home, where he's been most of his life, except for a short period of time where he was in the care of his mother outside of their home. When he came back from those 8 weeks, he has been reporting. He reported to me. He's always has a memory, it seems like, of the hitting, biting, and being in a cage. And he is doing his best to be a 4-year-old in school, and he has every toy known to man. And but yet he's still having, he's seeing Pam Millenbach for counseling. He's still having outbursts and showing the effects of trauma. A prolonged period of time in this environment will offer him the most likely chance to be resilient and to regrow his brain development and to get over the lack of trust that the abuse from mom has made in him. He's afraid of mom, does not want visits with mom. He's consistent. He talked about seeing Macy, who's a caseworker, in Pam Millenbach's report, and what he told me, he is not ready for any contact. Mother's still progressing in her criminal charges, new criminal charges, still some drug screens that are showing current use, and failing. Mom is not succeeding in her case service plan with counseling and some things that she needs to do. So with respect to the father issue, I just wanted to say that in the past, I had been very protective of this XD child because he has a right to child support from someone who signed an affidavit of parentage. But now that I know the family better, he is secure in his placement, where he's been, where he wants to be. And I think that when the DNA comes, we will be able to release this legal father, who I anticipate will not be the biological father. We will have to have some good background information on the new potential father, and make sure that he has skills before he's introduced to this child. Make sure that he understands the history and is appropriate to be around this child. So we'll look forward to that dad issue on April 9th, but at this time, all of the child's needs are being met. His maternal grandmother is home full time, and there's an adult uncle who's home full time, and it is a wonderful environment for this child. It is absolutely routine. All his school needs are met, his dental, medical needs are met. He's having normal holidays and traditions, and he wants to be in this placement. Thank you.
Ms. Thomas.
I can recall Ms. Moore to give her report.
Ms. Moore, come on back up to our witness stand. Thank you.
Ms. Moore, how are you involved in this matter?
I'm the foster care worker
And how long have you been the foster care worker?
since case opening,
And about when was that?
early November.
And since that time, you have put together a case service plan for Ms. Denias, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the last time you were in court was November 2nd. Since November 2nd, have you had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Denias?
I have.
And have you had the chance during this review period to go over the case service plan with her?
I have.
Do you believe that she has an understanding of what is required of her?
Yes, I do.
And Ms. Denias is not present today, is that correct?
That is correct.
Were you able to confirm whether she knew about today's hearing?
Not necessarily, no. Yes, I would say she knew about it. We had discussed it at her last criminal hearing. That was about a week and a half ago. However, I didn't follow up and text her this morning and remind her.
Okay, but she knew that we were going to have court.
Correct.
And she did sign the case service plan.
Correct.
So how would you describe her level of compliance with and benefit from her case service plan during this review period?
She has not complied whatsoever.
And the child remains placed with a relative caregiver, correct?
Correct.
And what would be the risk of harm to the child if the court were to return the child to mother's care and custody today?
In my opinion, it would be exposure to parental substance use, parental criminality, likelihood of mental and physical abuse against the child.
One of the main conditions that cause the child to come into care is the abuse, correct?
Correct.
And has mom participated in or engaged in any services to remedy or rectify that condition?
The only service that she has engaged in is the family preservation, and she has only had 3 meetings with them. And Tyler, the conductor of that, had told me that she does not actually participate, and her aunt does most of the talking.
Can you please refresh my memory as it relates to the criminal case? Is there no contact between the child and Ms. Denias through that case?
There is, however, early January, Judge Anzalone had mentioned bringing up visitation, and I had requested that we get a therapist recommendation before visits start. So that is the reason for Pam Millenbach's therapy report and her being in the courtroom today.
Thank you for that. Which I guess I skipped over a couple of things. You prepared this court report that's in front of the court today, correct?
Correct.
And included with your court report is the case service plan, a therapist report by Ms. Millenbach, a letter from Ms. Karen Gray regarding Ms. Denias, Ms. Denias' drug screens, and then the online ROA for the new criminal charges for Ms. Denias. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are there any other documents that have been circulated since you've submitted this court report?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and are there any updates or modifications that you need to make to this court report, or any updates as relates to the attachments?
The only update that I would like to make is that there was a new allegation to CPS in late November stating that Cheyenne had his pants and Cheyenne slapped him with a pull-up, put the pull-up on him, and then locked him into a dog cage. And then there was another allegation end of December stating that Cheyenne's ex-boyfriend had punched him.
And would these allegations would they have occurred prior to the child entering care?
Correct. It would have been during that 8-week stand that he was replaced back home.
Thank you. And then, so through the criminal case, Judge Anzalone considered parenting time. Ms. Millbach provided a report, and we've read the report, but can you highlight for the record what Ms. Millbach is recommending regarding parenting time?
The main recommendation is that parenting time does not occur. It is believed that Xavier is not ready for this interaction. One of Xavier's biggest triggers is just the word mom, so we have to be careful on what verbiage we are using when we're around the child and conducting home visits and sorts like that.
Is this family willing to provide permanency to this child if that is needed?
Yes, Xavier has actually been in their care for the majority of his life.
And, just to sort of refresh the record too, these grandparents had also attempted to get guardianship, correct?
Correct.
And somehow that was denied procedurally, or?
I don't understand the reason it was denied. However, it was through the Jackson court system.
Okay. And have you had the opportunity during this review period to speak with Mr. Donnelly?
Yes, but most of it was just regarding the DNA testing.
Okay. Can you tell us whether he has intentions of being in the child's life, or?
From my understanding, he does.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for that. Is there anything from your court report that you would like to highlight for the court's attention today?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. As it relates to Ms. Nice's drug screens, there have been a couple that have come back positive. Has she shown for all of them?
Those were actually voluntary drug screens, so she did that willingly. However, as it reflects in my report, all 3 were positive for marijuana, and then 1 was positive for cocaine.
And is there any services that she's participating in regarding the substance use?
No, because when this case first opened, there was nothing in the petition regarding substance use.
Thank you. I have no further questions of this witness. Your Honor, move to admit the court report and its attachments.
Any objections?
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you, they are received. Do we know whether or not Cheyenne is employed?
She is employed, I believe, with Hilux.
And is there a trauma assessment in the offing for the child?
Yes, it is scheduled for February 8th.
Thank you. Does he have any siblings? Do we know?
No.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Brooks?
Do you know informally what the results of the DNA test are?
No, I do not.
Okay. The boyfriend you referred to, may I assume, is not my client, Mr. Bliss, the one who's alleged to have punched the boy?
It is not your client. It is Paul Ortega.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Wilhelm?
Yes, Your Honor, just a couple of questions. So, Ms. Warren, just want to talk for a minute about that my client having known that we were having court here today. At first, you kind of mentioned that you didn't know, but then you said yes. So I just want to be sure. What do you remember about it, about talking to her?
We were in Judge Anzalone's courtroom for her last criminal hearing, and she had stated that she wanted to talk to me, and I said, okay, so we talked. And she had stated, I just want to know what my last drug test came back positive for, and I said marijuana. And then she said, okay, and I said, okay, we have court next week on the 29th, so I'll see you then.
Okay.
And she had stated, okay.
And she said, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Heiss?
The screens that you're taking from Cheyenne, that's when you see her face to face?
Correct.
She's showing up very positive for THC each time, is that true?
Correct.
And also one time she was positive for cocaine, right?
Correct.
And what brought you to screen her? Did she show intoxication?
One time I had asked her to come into the office to sign her case service plan, and she had a very, very pungent odor of marijuana on her person. So I had asked her, hey, are you willing to take a drug test for me? She had stated yes. So then the next time that she came in to get her results from her previous drug screen, I had asked her, hey, you willing to take another one? She had said yes, and that is when the positive for cocaine one came back. And then when I had let her know her results on that, she had stated, well, let me come in and take another one. I don't know how that was in my system, so.
My computer's not gonna cooperate right now, but this petition was adjudicated in Jackson, correct?
I don't believe so.
Okay, the allegations are like a few sentences long, is that right?
I'm not sure on that.
Do you have any of the police reports or the details of what happened to bring this child into care?
I have some of the details. I have pictures of the injuries, and then I have spoken to a police officer regarding her criminal charges.
I wonder if you could bring those pieces into our next court report, so that we're sure we're getting, for example, she's charged with physical abuse, but maybe she was alleged to have been using drugs at the time. And we would know that if we had those police reports.
I can get those for our next hearing.
Okay. The legal father, does he have a relationship with this child?
No.
The potential biological
I
father.
didn't hear the answer. Excuse me. I didn't hear the answer to that.
I had stated no.
Thank you.
Has the potential biological father does he even know this child?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is it true that Ms. Millenbach's report recommends no contact between the child and the mother until the child is ready, correct?
Correct.
And the child is not ready at this time?
Correct.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
Just one question, Your Honor, based on your question, Ms. Moore, in the child assessments, there's usually a bonding assessment component. Given the recommendations by Ms. Millenbach and what has been reported by the LGL and your knowledge of the case, would you be asking for Ms. Denias to participate in that bonding assessment component?
No, I have it set up that his current placement will do the bonding assessment with him.
Given that this is a reunification case for now, I'm just curious, I think the court's probably curious, how do you foresee this dyad, mom and child, reconnecting? What do we need to see from mom in order for us to even think about putting services in place for that reunification?
I'll start with Xavier, if that's okay. With Xavier, I believe that it is best for him to continue therapy with Ms. Millenbach, kind of get over that initial, I don't want to say trauma because it's going to be ongoing, but that initial hump of the issues. And then for Ms. Denias, I think it's necessary for her to do her psychological. I know that had been previously canceled due to Dr. Haugen, but it is rescheduled and it is expected for her to go. I also think it's appropriate for her to follow any recommendations from that psychological. And I think it's important for her to kind of get her head on straight. She doesn't really have appropriate housing. She doesn't have appropriate transportation. She's not testing negative for drug screens. So kind of start at the baseline and get her set up so then she can worry about Xavier after she's good.
Thank you for that. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Have you approached the grandparent placement about licensing? Are they applying for licensing?
I do not believe they are.
Would you be willing to explore that with them in the next?
Absolutely.
All right, any other questions, counselors?
No.
None.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. May I return to your seat? Your next witness, Ms. Thomas.
I have no further witnesses, Your Honor.
Mr. Brooks?
Eagerly awaiting the results of the DNA test. I have nothing, no witnesses to present.
Ms. Wilhelm?
No witnesses, Your Honor.
I have no witnesses, thank you.
All right, I would like to hear from the counselor. I know Ms. Millenbach is here with us today. Come on up to our witness stand. Thank you so much for joining us today. So the standard that the court has to look at with regard to whether or not to suspend visitation, and I understand that in this case, we also have bond conditions that prohibit contact. But should that change, the standard that I have to look at is whether or not there's a risk of harm associated with allowing a child to have time with that parent. So if you could talk to me a little bit about your work with the child, his diagnoses, and whether or not you think there would be a risk of harm to him, mentally, emotionally, physically, if visitation with his mother were to be ordered.
Xavier has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder for children under 6 and younger. He is a victim of severe abuse. He is experiencing complex trauma, which means that this has been ongoing, particularly since the visit in August. But it is believed that it happened before that based on what he has been telling me. I've been making weekly visits since the end of November with him, and they've been approximately 2 hours. Part of it has consisted of individual therapy with him, beginning with play therapy, just to give him several weeks, several visits of just getting to know me, to trust me. It only took 3 of those before he totally opened up about what had happened to him. And it goes back to a time when his mother was living in the home of the grandparents who were caring for him most of his life. And apparently this would all happen in the bedroom, the things that he described to me. He's a very expressive, very bright young boy. He's only 4 years old, but it's amazing to hear the vocabulary this little boy has. He's very friendly, he's very social. What is happening now is when he returned in August, he was reportedly starting to say things to his grandparents. As he walked into the house, and the first thing he did was pull up his sleeve and show them the bite mark. And then that was his first opening up about what was going on. And then he continued to make different allegations at that point. And I think they were advised to call in CPS to let them know. So there is an extensive CPS history on this case. I was asked in November to open up the case because the court wished an opinion on how to proceed with this. The first day I went in there, I knew nothing about the case basically, except we have a little boy who's in need of help right now. So what I noticed, the very first thing about him was that anytime you went near him, he flinched, which is a sign of here we have a child who has been in, all these things go through your mind. What has happened to this child that he would flinch, even at a new person? When I knew the grandparents had prepared him, oh, Pam, the person named Pam is coming to see you. And now he's had other people coming into the house, and he's very much been open with them. just since I've been working with him, there have been several allegations that have been called in. And so different workers have gone there. Even Ms. Heiss was in there just last week, and he opened up to her about what has happened. What happened was after the third visit, at the fourth visit, he started to open up about being hit, being kicked, being pinched, having this, and he would demonstrate it. He demonstrated with the vocabulary this little boy has. He's able to talk, and he role plays everything. Like this. My mom would do this every week since that fourth visit. He shows this. He goes into this.
So the record should reflect, Ms. Millenbach is demonstrating with her hands being choked. Is that?
Yes. And he also has said that she would pick him up like this, by his neck, by his head, basically. It wants to make you cry to know that a 4-year-old boy has been through this type of treatment. And it's worse. When he told me about the bite, it was the first time he opened up, and he pulls up his sleeve, whichever one it was, and he said, here, she hit me here, and here, and here. And then he pulls it up and look. And at that point, the scar was still there, it's still apparent. But there were these big bite marks in it. Then, well, this is what happens after he talks about his mom, or even hearing someone say the word mom. He gets down on the floor, face down, starts kicking, screaming. He goes into a rage. He has a very hard time getting out of it, because once a child gets into that, their brain cannot accommodate. He's totally overwhelmed with what has happened to him. This is why I'm calling this complex trauma, because this is going on. This is since last August, when he came back to his grandparents' house and felt safe again. And it was in an environment where he trusted the people who were with him, and he's extremely attached to the grandparents. That's the primary caregiver there. He gets down on the floor and will go under a table or behind a couch, bang his head, take his fists and actually go like this to his head. Grandma will come, and she's able to help him to self-regulate. She's very soothing with him. Sometimes it's grandpa. If grandma is not available right at that moment, they're very alert. They're in the other room, and they're hearing this. And then we usually in the first hour that I'm with them, I have grandma there. I meet with him usually at the beginning for about an hour, just kind of playing with him, and then we move into a family therapy session. And grandma and grandpa both come in and are part of that. And Cody is older, but the older young man who lives in the house, who's the son of the parents there, his parents, he will come in and out and join in this too when he feels like it. There's just a beautiful relationship there. But the important part of that is that grandma and grandpa are there, they help him just to soothe him. And they will get him out from under the table. They'll get him out from behind the couch, hold him, rock him, talk with him. And he has the ability to converse with adults very, very well, back and forth, and that will soothe him. But meanwhile, all of this has come out. So we've got a very difficult situation here with a little boy who has been so badly traumatized that it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a very long time for this boy, his brain. He has talked about things that happened prior to that were happening in the bedroom. Because what my understanding is, mom would keep him in the bedroom when she was living in the home for some time. She'd be in and out of the home, and then she would go off and live somewhere else usually with one of her boyfriends, and then she would appear back. But they could hear that this is when the grandparents started realizing something's going on in that bedroom, because they would hear him crying. But he at that point did not have the ability to even realize that this was not okay. But since his language has developed and his brain is just top notch, you know. So the healing of this boy is gonna take a long time, put it that way. For him to see at this point, to see his mother, he says, the question he asks me all the time, are you going to make me see my mother? Do I have to go and be with my mother again? How do I answer it? I don't know how to answer it. I have to say no. What he said to me last Friday, he calls the court the company. And I believe that's because his dad works for a company, and so he's heard this word company. Please tell the company that I don't want to go see my mom. I want to stay here. And he's very sincere in that. And I'm trying to respect that, not only for everybody, for the sake of this little boy. We've got a boy who's a little child here who's very much in need, where he feels stable, where he feels safe, where he's very attached is with the grandparents. So basically my recommendation would be to keep him there. What that involves is with his mom. I cannot see visits. I don't know when. I can't predict when. Even I've worked with one boy who the same thing happened to when he was 6 years old, and he's now 17. And he just now, it was his father who would kick him in the stomach, kick him in the chest. He just now is beginning to feel comfortable seeing his father. We don't know. I can predict he's gonna. I've been working with children and families my whole professional life, but since this whole trauma and research is coming out now, that is, we're able to see the developing brain of a child. This child's brain has been severely damaged. I think I'm waiting to get the CTEC report. I think that's going to be very helpful in giving ideas beyond what we're already doing. And what will help with that healing? What's going to be the best way forward for him? And whether based on that assessment, whether a visit would look appropriate. At this point, it does not for me. So
you don't have to apologize to me. I just need to know what's happening so I can make the most well-informed decision I can. So I appreciate your perspective. If you ever felt that you wanted some additional resources or referrals for the foster parents, for the relatives, would you be comfortable making those and asking for those?
I'm already giving them, I'm giving them readings on trauma, on parenting skills. They read them, they discuss them between themselves, they discuss them with me. I always do that. That will continue. They will get those. I know they themselves have been going to individual therapy. They're going to couples counseling. They're well engaged already in all of that. And one of the things that I have noticed that they responded to immediately at the very first visit, that he has a fascination with like guns and swords and things like that. And it's the violence. And so we spoke about that, and I said, I would recommend that. He wants to play with them. He's excited about playing with guns. And I said, I would recommend that you remove those from your house, because we have to do a shift in them. This kid has experienced violence very directly toward him. And so he's acting that out in his play. You see it, he takes dinosaurs, and what does he do with them? Crashes, or they're killing each other, they're biting each other, eating each other up. As little toys, there's a lot of that going on there. So they basically, the next time I got to the house, they were gone. So we're retraining his brain, basically. Those circuits in his brain, we're trying to get them back to some normalcy. Right now, it's just basically it's been eight visits that I've had in the last 2 months. And basically is helping him with relaxation techniques. How he's already able to identify his emotions, which is wonderful. That's usually the first step with trauma therapy. He already knows, and he's able to identify how he is. This is how bright he is. And but the next step is, okay, now let's get him. How can he relax? How can he self-regulate? And it's hard for him because he's thinking so fast, he's moving so fast. It's hard for him to sit down and just relax and take those deep breaths and all the other things that we teach them with trauma therapy. So I'm ready to go with the trauma therapy, but I don't at this point want to see having to add to it visits with mother, because this will regress. We will see total regression at that point, and it might put him over the edge. I'm afraid of that. There's a deep fear in him. And that's why I told the story about the 17-year-old boy who's still carrying around this what if. This boy is at least 6'3", just like his dad right now. And he's afraid of his father still. To be alone with him, he's still saying, what if?
Well, thank you. I'm gonna just ask you to wait one more minute to see if any of our other attorneys have questions. Mr. Brooks?
No, thank you.
Ms.
I've heard
Mullen?
enough.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Your Honor, part of me wants to nerd out with Ms. Mellenbach about brain development, all those things. So I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this. Ms. Mellenbach, brain development sort of happens from the bottom up, right? Reptilian brain, mammalian brain, emotional brain, cognitive brain. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that would be fair. I could go into a class on that, so.
Okay. And so when children experience trauma, the base of their brain, their body, that reptilian brain, I don't want to get into too much testimony here, but overall my question is, with the dysregulation that the body experiences and the brain experiences, and that amygdala firing, when a child is with a caregiver who cannot co-regulate or understand that, is there a risk of harm to that child?
Yes, there is. The fear that's there, it's his brain is already, it's into that. He brings it back. He's constantly bringing it back. You hope to get to the point where the child will finally be able to sit down, or as a little bit older, when they're able to write things down and do their narrative, or act it out through role play, through playhouse therapy, through dancing, through music, through any of those fine arts that we can use as therapy for children.
But even when that happens, right? Even when the child has an ability to sort of express him or herself and find that regulation and be able to know that the threat is not necessarily imminent and that amygdala sort of calms down a little bit, what is the risk of harm when the caregiver doesn't have the same understanding? The caregivers are unable. And I guess I'm going to spell it out. What would be the risk if this child 2 years from now returns back to Ms. Denias, who might not have done the work, so to speak, doesn't understand how to parent, doesn't understand how to self or co-regulate with this child? What is the risk?
It would cause further harm to the child. The interactions that would be there. My understanding from what I've heard is that at the point of I understand that she has admitted to all this. The mom has admitted to what she did do to the child, but there was no remorse shown. That's why she needs a psychological evaluation. I think when we see that, we're going to be very overwhelmed with that ourselves. So I don't think this is just substance abuse. The therapist at our agency did see her, and she's immediately, the idea was to start her in individual therapy, and she said, I can't see her until I have a psych eval.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I don't think Ms. Wellenbach actually talked to Ms. Denias, and
no, I haven't talked to her. No, this is from the therapist.
Well, no, I understand and very much appreciate your candor all of the way here, but I think that the question is about Xavier.
Any response?
My question is more about the risks of harm to the child, if the caregiver has not, obtained or gone through the same work to understand the trauma and understand how to co-regulate the child. So I think there is an element of misnias there, and it is a review hearing, so the rules of evidence don't apply, and hearsay can come in for whatever weight the court deems necessary. So I think it would be an appropriate response.
I would agree. I would also note, Ms. Wilhelm, that that information that Ms. Millenbach is referring to is also contained in the court report. So there has been an update that would allow her to have that information more than one way. And I think her using it in her analysis is appropriate. So thank you. I appreciate your perspective, but I am not overruling your judgment.
Thank you.
You may continue if you like.
Did I answer your question well enough?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for everything.
Any questions, Ms. Heiss?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and your testimony.
You're welcome.
All right, based on that, does anyone else have any witnesses or just closings?
No.
Your Honor, actually, no additional witnesses. But for closing purposes, we typically don't do this, but I would ask that this court have a combined review permanency planning hearing at our next review hearing. I'm hopeful that by then we might have the CTAC report done, have more information on paternity, and understand whether there is a biological father who's able, willing to meet the needs of this child, or whether a petition would be needed. But based on what we've seen in the report today and Ms. Millenbach's testimony, and I just read a court order that the Supreme Court and DHS are working on efforts to secure permanence within 12 months. And I think that particularly for this case, that we should be within those 12 months to achieve that. So I'm going to ask for that to be a combined hearing at our next review. Thank you.
Any comments, Ms. Wilhelm?
No comments, Your Honor. Thank you. In the absence of my client.
Ms. Heiss?
No comments, thank you.
All right, the court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review hearing, and that does include Mom, who was here with us at the last hearing, which was the initial disposition, wherein the case services plan became part of the court's order, and the rule upon which progress is to be gauged. I do not find that she's made progress in the last report period. If anything, we have more damaging information coming out as far as additional criminal charges, as well as some, we'll say, delay in getting started with her services. So I cannot find that she's made any progress in the last report period. Her absence today, as well as from her last circuit court case hearing, is also concerning. We have a child who has increased needs. We heard about that extensively from Ms. Millenbach today. There's also a lot of information about that in the court report and the attachments, which do constitute reasonable efforts towards the goal of reunification, spearheaded, of course, by Ms. Moore. Thank you. Thank you also to Ms. Heiss for her time and efforts as guardian ad litem. That you're certainly in satisfaction of your obligations as well. Thank you also to our attorney advocates for your time and efforts today. It will be the order of the court that the case be reviewed for permanency at our next court hearing on Tuesday, April 9th at 1:30 p.m. In addition to looking at that pretrial issue as it relates to the fathers for legal parentage and the DNA test results to come in. But I think that it is important in this case for this child to look at permanency given his increased needs and what he's been through and where we are at with Mom's lack of progress altogether. There is a significant risk of harm associated with returning this child to either parent at this point. Ms. Denias is not here. He's not engaged in any services to alleviate the risk of harm to physical, mental, emotional harm of her child, which were well reviewed, and the record reflects that today. Mr. Bliss does not have a relationship, as I understand it, with the child. So at this point, and he's waiting to the ANA. So that's not an appropriate placement. The child is doing well with his relatives, and we appreciate their efforts as well to support him and to educate themselves around what his challenges are. So that is certainly the safest and least restrictive place for this child at this time. That will remain the order of the court moving forward. And I will also spend the parenting time of Cheyenne Denias based on the information that I heard today, as well as what's contained in the court hearing, it's clear that there is a significant risk of harm to his mental and emotional health, but potentially also to his physical health, given that she's failed to engage in any services to address those issues. And we have seen a demonstration in the past that she is not able to regulate herself around her child, even in supervised settings, to prevent her from physically harming him. We heard a lot about how that's affected him up till today. So it will be the order of the court that her parenting time be suspended, regardless of what happens with the circuit court case. Unless there's any questions, that's all for today. We'll see you at 1:30 on Tuesday, April 9th, for our second review of Mom's case. And of course, the first permanency planning hearing and another pre-trial as it relates to the parentage on the father's side. Questions? Thank you. That's all for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.